when I was younger, I lived in England with my mom, and I would come back home from time to time. And I feel like every time I came home, I was bound closer and closer to this space and the energy here and our culture and our rhythm, the way we move, the way we speak. It was all enchanting to me. And I think that's continued to grow over the years. So I feel like my heart is intertwined with Trinidad in a way that I can't really describe in words. It's all these things that I didn't really have first-hand experience of, but I somehow built a nostalgia for. And I think that's become a part of the driving force of my work as well. So when I was in school, I always loved history. When I was in high school in England, I did history here and then came back and did sixth form in Trinidad. And prior to that, I thought I was getting this really robust history curriculum and I was learning so much. And then I came back home and realized I really hadn't done any of Caribbean history, and I had not explored, I guess, the heritage and the background of my own people. And it was a real awakening for me, and I think that was the beginning of what has taken shape in the work today, and how much of it is based on our past and how our past has informed our present, and what we can learn from that as well. I spent a lot of time working on projects for other people, and the collaboration was really, really fruitful, and I think I gained a lot from it, but I felt like I wanted an outlet that was totally my own, that I could channel all my ideas and my creativity into, and really have ownership over. And at some point in time, started dipping into different creative fields. So I did a bit of costume design, production design, and along the way realized that I really wanted to develop my own visual arts practice to find a more authentic form of self-expression. So in 2018, I started to build a new body of work that began with this book, The Caribbean in Sepia, that a friend had passed on to me. And flipping through the images, they're all archival images from the 1800s going forward. And I was just really struck by the fact that I hadn't seen so many of these images. And I felt like I was discovering Trinidad and the rest of the region in a completely new way. So I started kind of using those images as inspiration to create fabric collages and sculptures that try to bring that archive to life in a sense, have it live in a new way, in a new form. One of the more ambitious pieces that I did for that exhibition was the Washerwoman, which was based on a photograph from Jamaica in the 1890s. And I was really struck by the strength of the subject in the photo, and there were so many layers to it about female labor, about resistance and resilience. I just found myself wanting to know this person, and I kind of channeled all that into creating this sculpture out of beeswax and clothespins, and some kind of found materials as well. And I think of all the work that I showed in imprint, that was the piece that people were most drawn to or most intrigued by. I'm really grateful to Alice Yard for giving me this space to explore some more ambitious ideas that I haven't been able to before. And there's such an incredible energy here. It's all different creatives coming and going, and there's really a sense of collaboration and kind of feeding off of other people and off of the environment in a kind of enriching way. So it's been an incredible journey so far. I always try to be so delicate with these. The moment you put your fingers on it, it starts to mark up. So after the imprint exhibition in 2019, I realized that I was very much creating work from an instinctual place, but at the same time touching on quite heavy themes like colonial legacy. And I realized I needed to do a bit more research to give depth to the work and context. And I started a master's in creative practice and just began reading and taking in as much information as I possibly could. And I became very interested in archaeology and ideas around animism and the idea that land can have its own agency, and just kind of exploring the dialogue between our physical spaces and how we develop our cultural identity. So I started to look at these geological diagrams. I was really intrigued by this idea of showing the layers of the earth, but maybe thinking more about the layers of our history, particularly considering how much of it has been hidden or erased or obscured. And when I sort of delved into the terminology as well, there was some really interesting parallels, like they refer to one formation as the development of angular unconformity and disconformity, and these interesting terms that relate very much to aspects of our history. So I started to think a lot about this idea of land having such a huge impact on our cultural expression and our art forms. And I was reading this article about the Can Brûlée, and the fact that, it was this procession commemorating the burning of the canes, and it became, the beginnings of the mass that we know today. And I came across this diagram that was created from someone looking at a bird's eye view of the procession. And they talked about the fact that the stick fighters had their arms interlinked and moved together as this one unit. So the installation that I'm working on the wall right now is sort of inspired by that. This idea of this block of resistance moving together and also expressing itself creatively. Even though I became a little bit obsessed with drawing, I find that it helps me to come away from that and work in a different medium from time to time. And textiles, I guess it's because of the fashion background, textiles is still a huge part of my practice. So this is a project that's a work in progress, but I started to play around with the idea of making these life-size rag dolls, but continuing the conversation of human connected to the landscape. And in order to sort of literally infuse the land into these rag dolls, I was playing around with eco-printing. So some of these, well, all of these actually, are examples of different eco-prints using plant matter, that I've come across, that I've sourced, and mixed in with iron water and using different kind of treatments and steaming to bring out different effects. So eventually it will all build and come together, hopefully, as this dummy that I have here. I'll bring these dyed pieces to create the final ragdoll and photograph them within the environment. Recently, I've been thinking a lot about my process and how I create and why I create the way that I do. And I realized that a lot of it is very laborious. Like, I'm always doing these very, very intricate drawings that take a long time, or I'm endlessly stitching something together. And I realized that I think it's because I almost create a meditative space for me to think about the different themes or the subject matter, so that physical process becomes a thought process.